Now, another thing that's considered best practice by data analysts is hiding columns that are not necessary so that users do not have to wade through a lot of unnecessary material. So I'm going to go first of all to my data view, and I'm going to go to my company table. And what we can see here, for example, is company ID, and really that's not needed. So I want to right click it and I want to hide it from report view, which basically means that it's gone dim. And if I went back to report view and I went to company, you would no longer see company ID. So then people are just dealing with what they need to see. If I go back to say data view and I go to the customers table, let me just right click and collapse all. And then I go to the customers table, then I might decide that company ID is not necessary. So I can also right click that and say hide that from report view, either here in the field list, or I can do it if I go to the customer table, I can do it here by right clicking. So there's more than one place that you can do this. So I want to hide company ID. Now, if I then close customer table and go into customer, I also want to hide customer ID key. So I've got this little I here, which I mentioned in an earlier video not to accidentally click it because it will hide that field. So I want to hide customer key, hide customer ID, and that's probably the quickest way, is just to hit the little I. And so now what I want to do is go to the customer table. Customer ID I want to hide, geography ID I want to hide, subscription ID I want to hide. A lot of the ID fields they don't need to see, but they don't need to see role either, and they also don't need to see company ID, which I actually did, so that one's done. Now another way, if I right click and collapse all so that it's all tidy, is if I actually went to my model view. If I went to my model view, what you'll see is the little I has got a line across it for some of these fields. Those are the ones that are hidden. So let's say I went to the device, and in device I want to click on customer ID and hold the control key and click on ID. So you can hold the control key or the shift key, whichever's more comfortable. I like, and then just hit the I, and that'll hide both of those, as you can see there. If I went to the geography table, I would hide, let me just stretch it, geography ID, just by right clicking and hide it in report view, or hitting the little I, whichever's more comfortable. When it comes to the product table, this one here, I'm just going to hide the product key. So I will hit the little I, and reseller key and reseller ID in the reseller table, reseller ID and reseller key both get hidden as well. And if I went to the role table, it would just be role ID. So I'm going to hide that. And if I went to the sales table, there's about 5 fields in there I want to hide. One of them is customer key. One of them is product key. One of them is reseller key. And the other two are sales order line key and sales territory key. And so we're easily able to hide, and it's best practice, any columns that they're really not going to use. So if I go back to report view and I happen to look at any of these tables, I'll see that those fields are now not visible. And so I'll collapse all those. Now what I'd like to do is create a new measure, and this is to go in the key sales measures table. So I'm going to right click key sales measure and choose new measure. Not a quick measure, but a new measure, because I want to write it in DAX. So I'm creating a new measure called total sales, and it really is just the sum of the sales amount, which is qualified as being in the sales table, and enter. Sometimes you can get away without doing the close bracket, and I like to do that. So now I'd like to make another new measure. So I'm just going to right click the key sales measure. I'm going to choose new measure yet again, and this time I want to count. I actually want to call it number sales, and I want to count the product key, which I will find in the sales table, and enter. Having got the key sales measures that I need, I actually feel compelled now to stop people from trying to use the sales amount column. So I'm actually going to go to the sales table, and I'm going to right click sales amount, and I'm actually going to hide it. And I'm going to use the option just hide here. so that now it doesn't appear visible, and they will now start using the measures rather than the actual column. Now I do want to also, I think I already did that, hold on a minute. No, I didn't. So I'm going to go to the sales orders table, and in there you'll find the sales order line, and underneath that the line key. Now the line key I want to hide, so I'm going to right click and hide that. And I also want to right click sales orders, that one there, and hide that as well. So there's a couple of columns I want to hide from sales orders, so they're not tempted to use those either. Now, if I also go to the sales territory, there's a sales territory key. Can we hide that too, please? Hide. And also if I go to the subscription table, I want to hide the subscription ID. So I'm going to right click and hide that as well. Lastly, in the support tickets table, I'm just going to hide the support ticket ID. So I'll right click and I'll hide that, and also the customer ID. So really am hiding anything that they don't need to work with. If you right click, we saw that you could, if I right click here, for example, we could view any hidden columns. So that's how you manage your hidden columns. So you could view any hidden ones, and there they are there, they're now showing. And if I right click, I can take that off. So they go back to being hidden. So should you need to see what's been hidden in that query or table, you can do so just by right clicking. And if I needed to hide all columns, I do have the option of right clicking and hiding all or unhiding all or view hidden columns. So they're there as well. And the other thing I've mentioned in your notes, which I have actually practiced doing in a couple of videos, is right clicking and collapsing all right here. And also you can right click and expand all. So I need you to know that you can do that as well. So I'm going to right click and collapse all. Now the other thing also is if you have had some changes made to a table and to the data, you may also want to do a refresh. So I just want you to be aware that if you right click a table, you do have the option to refresh data as well, especially an incremental refresh if it's just that's what you're after. But basically if there's been any changes to your data, just make sure that your data is refreshed. Okay,